Hello, what is up internet people? In today's video I'm going to be going over my top 5 must-dos for traveling to Bali and also a bunch of other activities that I think that you should do if you have time. So without further ado, let's just get right into the video. The number one thing that I think that you should do if you go to Bali is go to the monkey forest. I made a separate video with tips and tricks and advice for how to act if you go to the monkey forest. The monkeys honestly will only come up to you if you have food on your person, so if you don't have food on you, then they'll pretty much leave you alone. It's really cool because you can interact with the animals up close and personal. If you see them at the zoo or out in the wild, it's definitely different than both of those things, but the animals are still wild animals, so they're not domesticated or anything like that, so they're free to roam. Sometimes you'll see them outside of the monkey forest itself and actually just around the city looking for food in various places. Actually, one monkey bit me, which was kind of scary, but it just feels like a human jaw. Like, it took my hand and grabbed it with its little hand, and it looks like a baby's hand. And it like grabbed my hand and it was like, its teeth that just feel like a human jaw, and it has thumbs obviously, so it's just such a weird thing. Like, they're so closely related to us in terms of evolution, but at the same time, like, how are we related, you know? It's so weird. So that's definitely a cool experience, and I highly recommend that. Yeah, you really just have to pay a couple dollars for entrance into the park, and you can spend as long as you want there. So it's very cool. The next thing that I would definitely highly suggest doing is snorkeling / diving. It's such a surreal experience to actually be breathing underwater. It's so unnatural, but so very cool, and you can go down and be down for however long as you like. So I'm a certified advanced scuba diver, but my two friends weren't certified and they had never done it before, so they did a discovery dive, which is like the most basic kind of diving experience that you can have. It's typically the dive experience that people do when they go on vacation, because you pretty much just get familiarized with all the equipment. They teach you everything about how to use everything, and they teach you in the pool first so you can test and see if you want to do it or not. We were on Gili Air and they took us out on the boat towards Gili I think? I forget. They basically took us to an area where the slope from the beach turned into the deep ocean, so we were diving on this like 45-degree angle slope, and you could see all the tropical fish on the reef up here, and then down here you could see turtles and sharks and stuff, and that whole dive I think was like 45 minutes, and we saw 9 or 10 turtles, and some of them were huge, and it was such a cool experience. I've dove in Key Largo, Florida, the Great Barrier Reef, and a couple of other places, but this one was such a unique experience. So even if you've dove before, I highly recommend diving in Bali, because the experience is just so different. There's different wildlife, and of course they will teach you, because it's a guided experience, so they'll teach you about the different wildlife and stuff like that, which is really cool. If that seems too expensive or too scary or whatever, and you don't want to do that, then I highly recommend snorkeling or just swimming to see the marine life, because the marine life is so diverse. I've uploaded a couple videos already about snorkeling with the jellyfish, snorkeling with sea snakes, just some of the best snorkeling. That being said, we also stumbled upon a dead goat in the water, which was really surreal also, because we realized that this dead goat was the result of an animal sacrifice, which happens in Bali. And yeah, I definitely recommend just trying to see the marine life any way that you possibly can, because it is just so beautiful there. So Bali is obviously one of the bigger islands in the Indonesia chain of islands. Lombok is another kind of less famous island, but in between those two big islands are the Gili Islands and a couple of other smaller islands. So I definitely recommend trying to go to one of the smaller islands. Even if you're just in Bali for a week or so, we were there for just under 2 weeks, but you could definitely spend just a couple of days on the Gili Islands or some other small islands. We went to Gili Air, which is so small that there's no cars. Everything is horse-drawn carriage, which is very unique. Also, because it's such a small island, you can pretty much walk around the whole island. You're not overwhelmed with things to do, so it's a really nice way to escape from the cities and escape from the jungles and just kind of have a nice, relaxing beach vacation. We personally only stayed and spent time on Gili Air, but that's the one that I recommend if you want to kind of just have a chill time, Gili is supposed to be more for couples, but otherwise Gili Tea is the most popular, biggest option of the 3 islands, and it's more for partying and stuff. So I've heard. Obviously you don't have to, but it's obviously nice for budget accommodation and stuff like that because there's so many options, but there was also very good budget accommodation at Gili Air as well. The next of my top 5 must-dos is to try the local food and fruits and tropical things that you can only find in Bali and not anywhere else. The best authentic food that I had in Bali was actually on Gili Air, and it was from a place called Ina Gili Guest House, which is a guest house, obviously, so you can also stay here. I forget the exact name of the meal that we had, but it basically was just a chicken curry. I think that it really was just called chicken curry. I'm sure there's an actual Balinese word for it, but it's green coconut milk curry, and it was just so good. Best curry I've had, best food experience that I've had in all of Bali, because we were speaking with these Balinese people, and obviously it's hard to get to know locals when you don't speak the language, so it was nice because they had been learning a little bit of English because they work at this guest house anyway. So it was really nice. They were telling us all about the island and their experience and their life, and that's the kind of thing that I really enjoy when I go to new places, is getting to know the people from that place. They were really engaging with us and told us things about the history and the religion and stuff like that, which was very cool. A specific meal that we were told to try is rendang, which is an Indonesian meal. It's kind of like a stewed beef, and we tried that a couple of times. It was really good as well. Some of the staples that are pretty easy to eat, you can't really go wrong ordering them, is mee goreng and nasi goreng. So mee goreng is literally just fried noodles, and nasi goreng is fried rice. So those are just very basic, but they have very specific kind of seasoning, so it's kind of like pad thai. There's so many ways that you can make it, but generally if you order that, you can't really go wrong. Also, because Bali is an island, they really have good seafood, so definitely if you eat meat and seafood, I would definitely try some of the grilled fish. Try to ask them for chef specials and like the special types of things that people in Bali eat, because then you're really going to have a more authentic experience, get to know the types of flavors that they like. I do think some of the food is spicy, but you can always ask them to make it mild for you. But wherever you are on Bali, I would definitely try to catch as many sunrises and sunsets as possible, because for whatever reason, I just think that Bali had some of the nicest sunrises and sunsets that I've seen. The way that the sky just turns pink and purple and orange is just really, really beautiful. So because you're on vacation or traveling there, you may as well try to enjoy yourself as much as possible. So I definitely recommend trying to see that as much as possible, especially if you can get it right over the water. It's super beautiful. So finally, I'm just going to give you a couple of last minute recommendations for other activities that you can do if none of those 5 interested you. First of all, whitewater rafting. We did whitewater rafting with the company Red Paddle Bali Adventures, and that was down the Agong River, I think it was called, and it was a very good experience. But coming from New England, I had done a lot more intense whitewater rafting before. I kind of think that it was more of a leisurely kind of experience, more to just see the jungle and the rock formations and the black sand. That was all very, very cool, but in terms of how difficult and strenuous the whitewater rafting actually was, it wasn't very difficult, but definitely still recommended. I would also recommend going to learn to surf, because on the west coast there are a couple of surf towns. We went to Kuta, and it did have really, really good beginner surfing, and probably if we went to other beaches we would have gotten more advanced surfing as well. The reason I don't recommend that in my top 5 is also because the water is just so dirty, and there's just so much trash in the water that it kind of made the surf experience not as enjoyable. I also am not sure what else was in the water, whether it was like ocean mites or sea fleas, I forget what they're called or whatever, but I kept getting stung by something, so that experience was like Also, breakdown of where we stayed in Bali. We went to Ubud, Padang Bai, Gili Air, and then Kuta. I think that was everywhere that we stayed, and of those places I probably wouldn't have stayed in Kuta again, but that's just my personal opinion. We also went to Nusa Dua for the beaches there, but that's a larger region as well, so if you go there, you probably want to spend a couple more days there as well. There's also a ton of very picturesque and aesthetically pleasing rice fields in Bali. Personally, I think that the really famous ones seem really cool, but I wouldn't do them with a tour just because I feel like they're very overpriced for the experience that you're getting. We met a couple of people who kind of told us that it was super hot and you didn't really get that much in the tour, although you could go by yourself to go see the rice fields. Obviously, do your own research to see whether or not that's an experience worth having for you. These rice fields are one of the most famous places in Bali, so if you go there and you want to check that out, you definitely can, but just know that it is one of the most touristy things, so the experience might be more expensive, etc. There's also tons of waterfalls and volcanoes to explore around Bali. We didn't have the time to do it, and at the time that we went, I think the weather was pretty poor to do the volcano hikes and stuff like that. So definitely, if you have time, just break that down based on what you are interested in. So that's pretty much all I have prepared for today. If you have questions, please leave it in the comments below. And please subscribe if you haven't already. It would really mean the world to me. And I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye!